Buenos días, bienvenidos y bienvenidas al webinar Experiencias Internacionales en Laboratorios Virtuales y Físicos, Desafíos y Oportunidades para las zonas. Va a comenzar haciendo uso de la palabra el director técnico del Instituto Nacional de Estadística, Aboal, y seguidamente el subdirector general Federico Segui.
Buenos días. A continuación voy a continuar en inglés. Good morning in Uruguay and other countries from the Americas. We have participants from Canada, Mexico, US, Cuba. And good afternoon in other time zones. We have also participants today from Africa, Asia, and Europe. Thank you for participate in this webinar. It's a pleasure to me to open this webinar on international experiences on research data centers, challenges and opportunities for the National Institutes of Statistics. As a part of the strategic plan of the National Institute of Statistics of Uruguay, we are working very hard in the direction of an intensive use of administrative registers. We also envisage for the Institute a role as a data steward, where the Institute not only generates new data sets in the field, but also manage data and information coming from many other institutions. Of course, this is increasing the scope and the quantity of data that the Institute is currently managing. This is also generating the demand and the need for instruments and tools for sharing data in a controlled environment. Of course, this is not only in benefit of users, but also in the Institute's interests. For example, the Institute can access new data sets coming from other institutions in the process of answering the needs of users. I would like to thank you, our colleagues from Statistics Finland, INEGI Mexico, and Statistics Canada for sharing their experiences today. We are eager to learn from their experiences in the setting up of research data centers, and also from the challenges and opportunities that these research centers entail. I also thank our colleagues from Uruguay that are representing the user side of this story. That will be talking in the second part of this webinar. In particular, Javier Lacida, the president of the National Institute of Educational Evaluation in Uruguay, and Lorenzo Caliendo, the president of the Society of Economists of Uruguay and professor at Yale University. Thank you again, and I hope that the next 2 hours of this webinar will be of interest of all of you, as certainly will be for us in Uruguay. Thank you, and I hope you a good webinar.
Seguidamente hará uso de la palabra el subdirector general del Instituto Nacional de Estadística, Federico Segui.
Good morning, and good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. First of all, I would like to thank our speakers and panelists to be here, and to the audience for joining this webinar. let me give you some information, some context. Let me tell you what are we doing at the National Statistical Institute briefly. I have a presentation. Sorry. Yeah, okay. Last year, we have implemented the integrated system of statistical registers and surveys, the Cierre. This not just a central database, it's not just an information system. The Cierre is a system in the broadest sense of the term, made up of a set of interrelated elements that works as a whole. It's a conceptual system, a management system, and an information system implemented through the Statistical data warehouse. The Cierre is based on a series of key elements, which perhaps are not the most visible. The most visible part of the system is the data warehouse, and the basis of the system which supports the Cierre is a conceptual and methodological framework of the system. This document is published in our website. We also have a very important element, that is the generic statistical registers business process model, adapted from the GSBPM model developed by INEGI. And another fundamental element, that is the DNA of the data warehouse system, is the data management and especially the master data management. The Cierre is an integrated system of statistical registers, but also censuses and surveys. It is based on the model of the Scandinavian countries, which is made up of 3 base registers: population, business, and real estate. Besides, the base registers are linked among them and with other registers of the system by the key variables, like the statistical ID number of person, the statistical ID number of business, and the other scope. So the personal ID number, cédula de identidad, and the business ID number, the root number, are replaced by a random ID number in order to identify the original record and preserve the confidentiality of the information. Let's see the current status at the NSI of Uruguay. We periodically receive more than 400 microdata sets from several administrative sources. Then a transformation and quality checks processes are run by the NSI to transform administrative registers and administrative variables into statistical ones. We have already built these 3 or 4 base registers, but it requires a continuous work to improve the system. So it's a work in progress, you know. Let's talk about the population register. The NSI is member of the CIAS initiative of the Ministry of Social Development. This integrated information system on social area is fed by 62 administrative registers from 15 institutions like Social Security Authority, Ministry of Social Development, Dwellings, Agriculture, Health, Public and Private Health Services, Public and Private Education Services, etc. It's not just a register of social programs beneficiaries, but it integrates record of people through record linkage by national ID number from different government agencies, the administrative sources. It is a big information system or central database created mainly for policy making, monitoring, and public management purposes. Then it is also used for statistical purposes, like the NSI does. We receive this database periodically from the ministry, and we proceed with the transformation processes that I mentioned it before. Other important statistical registers of the Cierre system are the wages and activities registers. Monthly, we receive data on wages and activities of civil servants, like public sector, from the Ministry of Finance, and from Ministry of Labor and the Social Security Authority, we receive data of private workers. We're trying to use these registers to produce the wages and price index based on administrative data. You know? Also, our team of data analysts has developed a series of dashboards and visualizations based on these sources. We want to exploit more this goldmine of information, especially by researchers and also research from the academic sector and also from the public sector, the national statistical system. That's why we organized this webinar to learn from other NSOs on providing access to microdata for researchers in a secure environment. So let's move to the session of international experiences. Our first speaker is Marianne Johnson, Senior Advisor at Research Services, Partnership and Ecosystem Relations of Statistics Finland. The second speaker will be Natalia Volkov, Director of Microdata Access of INEGI Mexico. And the final speaker will be Sara Timbane, Analyst of the Research Data Center at Statistics Canada's Data Access Division. And at the end, we will have time to questions and answers. So please use the Zoom chat to ask questions to the speakers, okay? So please, Marianne, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much, Federico. And I would also like to thank you for having this fine presentation in the beginning, showing also, you showed how you have data in Uruguay, but it's very similar to our data. We have a lot of register data. We can put them together using the ID numbers, and then for other use, then we have a pseudo number instead. So this was a very good sort of start, and then I will go on from there, not so much talking about what kind of data we have and from where we get it, but more than how we make it available for researchers. But yes, hello, it's evening here in Finland already, but good morning to you, the other side of the world. And my presentation, let's see, hopefully you get to see it. Do you see the presentation?
Yes.
Yes, you do. Fine. Okay, so the name of the presentation is Research Services and Fiona Remote Access System at Statistics Finland. I will be putting more emphasis on talking about the research services, and then a little bit then about our our sort of data secure remote access system that we have developed to try to make data more securely available. Let's see now. So what we do at Research Services is that we have our objective that the data that has been gathered for statistical purposes should also be used for scientific studies and for statistical surveys on social conditions. And this work should be done or can be done by people outside of Statistics Finland. So what we do is, because this is of course confidential data, personal data and so forth. So before anybody can get the data, we handle the user license requests. And then we produce these both data sets for then the researchers. And I will talk about both our ready-made data sets and tailored data sets. But we have also other tasks. One is this to manage and develop the remote access system. Then we also at Research Services have a small team that work with the microsimulation model. And then we try to somewhat participate in research projects and in different kind of development work, but that is not at all sort of the focus. It's more whenever there is an interesting project going on and somebody is asked to take part of it. So a small look at who we are and is that we at Statistics Finland have had a centralized research service unit since 2010. Before that also, we did the same work that we're doing now too, but then we were in the different statistical departments. But after that, it has been centralized and there has been more development work made on making sure that we have good processes for getting the data for researchers and other users. There are about 25 of us, and then we have some part-time workers, very much a small part, but we feel they are very important because they bring the research view to how we work and how the data should be made available for researchers to us. We have a little bit under 500 permit applications per year. About half of them are applications for just sort of adding people to a research project that is already ongoing or asking for more time and so forth. So we actually have about 200 to 250 data deliveries. And when I say data deliveries, as you will hear later on, it doesn't always mean a physical delivery. It also means putting the data on our remote access system and making it available. So in the remote access system, currently we have about 250 projects and 750 researchers. And in this graph, you see that this is growing all the time. And our revenue last year was 1.3 million euros. I can't say what that would be in the Uruguay currency, but the main thing that we are a little bit concerned about is that it only covers less than 50% of our costs. So we still need to have the budget from our Ministry of Finances also covering part of the work that we are doing. This is then a sort of looking a little bit closer at Research Services. We have 4 different teams, and we have a team that work with tailor-made data sets. So according to the order that comes from the researchers, actually what variables they need to ask us to pull out, and we do the work there in this team. Then we have a team, this is a little bit newer, that we make these ready-made data sets that are up there on the shelf for researchers when they put in a application. And then, as I told about the microsimulation And then we are also, and this I will come to a little bit, I think, in the next slide, because according to the Statistics Act, there are some data that we can give out with identifiers, and that is a different type of work. So that's a special team that works with that. And this shows that within the blue box there, or the light blue box, are the data that has to be used through our remote access system. And then there was this special type of data that can be given out to the researcher. So yes, here comes just a couple of words about the laws and the acts that makes this possible. So first, starting out with saying what is not possible is that we are not, of course, allowed to give out any data for any surveillance or investigation into just one person or one enterprise and so forth. So this is, it really has to be, so as it says then in the Statistics Act, the next point is that the data that we give out be used for scientific research or for statistical surveys concerning social conditions. This last part is a little bit more difficult for us to know how to know when in the application comes in that we know we can sort of look at what is a statistical research, because we know that should be done at research institutions or universities and so forth, but sort of this is a little bit more tricky, but we don't give out data, for instance, for marketing research or marketing surveys. And yes, the sort of the big thing was how the data has to be when we give it out is that all direct identifiers of the statistical units, so both of the persons, but also of the establishments and then all sort of names and addresses and so must be deleted from the data set, and instead we have pseudo numbers. But here is the exception is the cause of death data, and then also some variables, which is education, occupation, and socioeconomic status that we can give out with identification numbers. I don't know what the history is on that, but it has been like this for a long time. And just at the time being now, we have a suggested amendment to the decree on Statistics Finland, and that is that there should be added a task for Statistics Finland to produce this research and data service. I mean, we've been doing this for ages, but it has been okay with the law saying that we can give out the data, but it hasn't really stated anywhere that is what Statistics Finland should be doing. But now this is this amendment saying this, and when it becomes our task, there might be also a better chance for getting budget money to do that task. There are also then other sort of government and also European laws, of course. Well, of course, the European Statistics Acts are important for us also, but there is this act of openness of government activities, and that what we look at here is that the grants or the licenses can only be given on case-to-case basis, and this is something that now is getting more and more difficult, because more and more users would like to just gather a big data set for them, and then this big data set could be used for all kind of different surveys, and we are trying to tell them no, for each new research topic you have to ask for a new license. And then of course then the GDPR from European data protection, there comes then the need to minimize the data that we give out, that it should only be the data that the researcher actually need for what they are doing. But then I also added this because, as you maybe noticed, the topic just now at research services is that we're not making enough money, but and that comes then from the decree of charge criteria of the state, that any work sort of based on orders, separate orders should be it's chargeable work. Okay, so a fast rundown then of how a typical sort of research process goes through at research services. There's always the application first, and now we actually just 2 months ago we launched the electronic application portal. So the researchers go sign into that and submit their application electronically. And we of course, because we need to know what the data they're asking for should be used for, so there has to be the research plan, and we also ask everybody that use data to give a pledge of secrecy. We have an in-house ethics committee that looks at research or these kind of license applications that are more difficult, like this, what I said, for instance, when they just want a big data set to do all kind of research on, and we have to sort of look at that does this go according to the laws that are set up? And we usually don't we usually work with the researchers so far that they put in an application that we can say okay to, so we can do some modification on the way. And then after the researcher has the permit, then we go ahead and make a contract about how much it costs and when they will get the data. And then either we put together the data and put it up on the remote access system, or else we can, in this part, we can also just open up the access or the access to the ready-made data sets that are in the remote access system already. And what we do is we check all the outputs from the remote access system. So before the researcher gets that, to make sure that they are anonymized, and then the researcher can put them into their publication as such. This is maybe just a sort of during the 10 years of research services, or 12 years now, the centralized the development that has been from delivered data, and we also had a research laboratory before that researchers came to, and at Statistics Finland, and there could use the data, and it has gone the development from this to then the remote access. And why we have had this development, or wanted to make sure we can do things this way, is that we feel that remote access we had good control, much better control about the distribution from the delivered data. There was always the risk of somebody giving it out to somebody who wasn't supposed to have it. Of course, the security is important. Then maybe this geographical equality is sort of from the research laboratory, when the researchers in other parts of Finland than Helsinki weren't that happy about having to travel to Helsinki to use the data. And then we also now are able to give out better data to the researchers, as we don't have to anonymize the data, and we can give out even data on total populations in the remote access system. And then also this other development from tailored made data to ready-made data sets, and there is the maybe sort of faster and also better. The ready-made data sets are better. The metadata is better available, and the researchers can sort of discuss the data sets better among each other if they all use somewhat the same data sets. I won't go through this, but this is just an example of our different kind of ready-made data sets. They are according to different subject matters, and we have them on our metadata catalog, the descriptions and also the variable descriptions of what is included in each data set. Still a couple of words about the remote access system that we have. We have also, I mean, we looked at the other remote access systems that were already up and running before 2010. That was mainly then Netherlands, Denmark, and Sweden's statistical offices had remote access systems, and we copied very much from them. And and the idea there is that the researcher from working from office or nowadays from home quite often because of the pandemic, they can just sign up and it feels like they're working from their own desktop. They have mostly been Windows now, but we're looking into having also Linux. And for each research projects, there's a project-specific folder. And we have outsourced now the maintenance of the remote access system to a non-profit state enterprise that is under the Ministry of Education. And we felt that was the right thing to do because it's not the expertise of Statistics Finland how to upkeep a secure environment. Okay, I think I won't go through these now. Just a couple, we have prices. These are also on our web pages, and we have for researchers, actually the cost of the remote access is their biggest cost. Our data sets, these ready-made data sets are the price is quite, for researchers it isn't too difficult to find the money for that, but maybe sometimes for the remote access system. This is my last slide, I think, and I'll just say the last what we did during the last year. We had a COVID situation room where researchers at a couple different research institutions got together and asked for a quite extensive data set and also data from other organizations that were added, came through Statistics Finland. We took away the direct identifiers, put in the same pseudo identifiers that were in our data, and put all of that into the folder on our remote access system for these researchers to use. And what we was here different was that we were very fast with getting the data and the register data to the researchers. And and that is something that now we couldn't. We said that this is just for a certain time. They can have this special system, but now we're putting up something called the data room pilot, and that's a little bit the same kind of. And the idea is to get the register information as fast as possible to the researchers from Statistics Finland and also from other organizations. But my last words will be about this, what our Director General just now is very interested in and would like us to find out a little bit more about not making it be the microdata available as such, so that the researchers can look at the microdata, but make some kind of applications, solutions available for the users where the microdata is there someplace behind, but the user can't see the microdata, but can make their own programs and to take out it. Statistics Norway has done interesting work here, and this is something that we're hoping that maybe, for instance, for governmental work, they won't be needing the precise data on individuals, but could use this kind of system. Okay, I think my time is up, so there is possibility to get more information from other places. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marianne, for your fantastic presentation. A lot of information and your experience is wonderful to learn from it. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Natalia Volko from INEGI, Mexico. Please, Natalia, the floor is yours.
Hay que desbloquear el micrófono, Natalia.
Gracias. Yo comparto pantalla, ¿verdad?
Sí.
Ok, comparto pantalla. Esta. Okay, you can see now my slides, yes?
Not yet.
Not yet. Wait. Compartir. Are you able to see my, yeah? Okay. Well, I'm going to present you the Microdata Access Service that the National Institute of Statistics and Geography is providing since 2000. Well, something started from 2008, which was a direct download, but we start to provide microdata laboratory service from 2013. But I will try to present like a holistic view of what we provide as microdata access services. And I like very much the view of Finland, that because we think the same. It's not only providing access to microdata, but really supporting research. Sorry. Just the legal framework, which I think is important because that's what allows you or not allows you to provide this type of services. We used to, well, the first statistical law comes from 1980, and that didn't explicitly talk about microdata, so we couldn't provide the service as such. We started providing services, but it had costs. And for agriculture and an establishment, some researchers could have access if they had a personal relation, but there was not an explicit mention that we should provide access to microdata in that law. So that was how we used to provide it. All the household microdata was sold in external memory devices, and the agricultural and establishment only if you have like a friend inside the institute that could help you and have the contact to have your research done. In 2008, we have a new law, which was the Statistical and Geographical Information System National Law. And it has a marvelous article, number the 100 article. And it says that INEGI, following best international practices, will provide access to microdata for academic research and support of public policy. And I say it's a magnificent article because it has a lot of silence that allowed us a lot of space to work out how we could do it. Well, we follow what they said and we check out how other countries have done it. And we took the experience of the ONS of the United Kingdom, the Census Bureau of the United States, and we also, I mean, from Canada, New Zealand, and we try to put all those experiences in our own conditions. What was very important is that we organize the microdata services as an institutional service, and we provide transborder access. That was at that moment leading edge because that's what we saw other countries were trying to do, because usually they only gave access to their own researchers, and we provide access, transborder access. We defined an integral, a holistic policy to provide access to microdata. And in this thing, we have two basic, two different types. We have the direct download of all the household surveys, all the sociodemographic statistics, except the household and population census. But all the administrative registers, They can download directly from INEGI, but the location of the microdata is limited to the third geographical level, what we call municipality. If any research needs the microdata to be located more disaggregation geographically, more precision, it has to be through the laboratory. And the rest, all the service and administrative registers and the census from establishments and agriculture units has to be through remote access, what we call remote processing and microdata laboratory. Also the National Household and Population Census. And these two services, the microdata laboratory and the remote processing, is only provided to postgraduate students and research from academic institutions and public servants. What does mean academic institutions? That they have to have in their document of establishment explicitly say that they carry out research. We, as Finland, we do not provide access for example, marketing. It's only for research purposes or for the development of, support public policy that can be operation, evaluation, or even definition of public policy. Well, following the article, we follow best international practices, and we choose the 5S model management risk, which was developed by Felix Ritchie in the United Kingdom. Basically, this model, what makes is that it recognizes that there is risk in providing access to microdata. You cannot eliminate it. But what you do is that you manage it. And to manage it, you have to have 5 elements that have to be secure. It has to be the configuration, which includes the physical enclave, the logical space in a high security server, and all the physical, we have CCTV, we have biometric entrance, and well, we have also the legal framework. We have some rules of how this microdata laboratory has to operate. That's for the configuration, secure configuration. You have physical and logical. The logical, we have Citrix server, which is in the computer center in Aguascalientes in Mexico. I have to tell you that in Mexico, the statistical office premises are outside the main city. So all the data stays there, and the users have contact through thin client. They only have like the views of what they are doing, but all the data rests in the microdata in the computer center. As Finland, we call that the logical space we provide to each research project is not for each researcher, but for each research project. We call it that virtual desk, and it's in a high secure server. The other element that has to be secure is the person. They have to fill an application, and they need accreditation. They are not entitled on themselves to be users of the microdata laboratory, but they have to have the accreditation of their institution and or else of the institution that supports science in Mexico. Again, very much following the ONS model that they use this research, Social and Economic Research Council, and users, if they have relation with the Research Social and Economic Council, they can use the microdata laboratory, the same in Mexico. But here we only have it now in our premises. We don't have as remote access as Finland explained it. It's in the premises of INEGI in the main city, in the capital. So they have to be affiliated to an institution. They also have to undertake a training session before they go into the microdata laboratory, and they have to sign some terms and conditions. So they delivered 2 documents signed, the application, because there they state the purpose of the research, and the terms and conditions. And for us, that means very important is the training session. We provide lots of material about the importance of confidentiality. We tell them they are become partners of INEGI when they also have to safeguard confidentiality and understand why it's so important to safeguard confidentiality. And we also teach them the procedures and nomenclature of the files and how we provide a service, which is very important because if not, it's impossible to handle. We have like 450 active research projects and we are 5 people. We will see, I will present you how we manage this, is because we don't manage the data. The data is managed by the persons that are in charge of each statistical project. And then the third element that has to be secure is secure projects. For secure projects, what we understand is that this, the knowledge that would be created with this analysis will be publicly available. That is an academic analysis, and that sooner or later a paper will be published, and they have to give us a copy of that paper. And we have a database of reference of papers published with microdata. The fourth element that has to be secure is data under demand. Very similar to what Finland said. We don't give away, they say we want to have access to economic census. It's not all the economic census. They have to select the variables they need. It's not that they select it once, because sometimes when you go ahead in your research, you realize some other variables can also be interesting. They can also, as they go on the research, they can ask us for more variables, but they do have to make a selection every time. And the third element is everything that is done within the Microdata laboratory has to be checked by the areas responsible for each statistical project. So we have these 5 elements of secure that creates what the Institute of Statistics in Germany named Circle of Trust. Users in that circle of trust can have access to confidential data. One thing, we never allowed direct identifiers. For us, the precise location, like coordinates, is direct identifiers. And the minimum location we provide is block level in the microdata laboratory. So here you see the logic configuration. I always say that that's the real security. We have this virtual desk that is created in this secure service within the computer center in INEGI. And it's the area responsible of the statistical project that loads the microdata that has selected the user. And the user, through the microdata laboratory, all the premises that are in INEGI building, has access to that microdata, does its processing, and when he needs to take something out, then he requests the revision of output, the clearance of output. And everything is done through INEGI network. In fact, this network is separate from the INEGI regular network. And the way we work, also following best international practices, this is how Eurostat works a bit. But of course, Eurostat is with the Institute of Statistics of Europe, and for us is with the areas responsible of each statistical project. And we make all the negotiation with the areas of the statistical data that the user is requesting. And sometimes even we have to make meetings, so the user has to put his points why he needs this data. Sometimes the area says, that's not good for us, as an objective. And well, we help the user try to explain his points to say, well, I need this data for this reason. And sometimes we have to coordinate areas because users use microdata from different statistical projects from different statistical areas. And you will see this is how the demand for the service has developed. And you can clearly see that, well, it started very slowly, but when it started, it was clear that if the user had the possibility to come to our microdata laboratory, he will go for it instead of the remote processing. Because for the user, it's very important to see the data. Sometimes, I mean, it has happened many times. With remote processing, the user sends the do file or the script file, INEGI processes it and then checks, clears output, and then delivers the results. But sometimes really the user has to see the data to understand why things work or not work. And you will see here, well, COVID shows very extremely here, the impact of COVID. By the time COVID started, we had a lot of users in the microdata, but well, it stopped one day to the other. March 26, we closed the microdata laboratory. And we offer all our users to go to remote processing, but I will tell you, remote processing also always is with the original data. And the users used to say, well, I already work and clear my data, and I want to process with the data I have in my virtual desk. So we create another service in which the user send us the microdata. We went into their virtual desk and we process with their data. And then the rest of the process went the same. But you clearly say how important is the microdata laboratories for research purposes. And it started to pick up again. We're already starting to provide access. What were the challenges faced by microdata laboratory? Well, I think we had a very strong point in the cultural change from risk aversion to risk management. At the beginning, the areas were not convinced that it was difficult to convince them that we could manage the risk and have the benefit for society of all the research done there. Also, it has a lot to do with our cultural condition in Mexico. Usually in Mexico, people tend to bargain. And here we have a very strong point that the rules are the rules and there's no bargaining. We also, I think, challenges require standard documentation of all statistical projects. The DDI is not enough. We need more structured metadata so users can more easily identify what is relevant and useful for them. Also, a challenge is management user expectation through the whole process of attention since they start having contact with our website. The demand has increased so much the microdata laboratory personnel is overloaded, and it only looks like we are going to have more increase of demand because we receive researchers from all over the world. I mean, just to tell you, one day a student called me from Taiwan and wanted to have access, and she said to me, could I speak in English because my Spanish is not good, and I say, let alone I don't speak Chinese at all, so yes, go and speak in English. I mean, we really receive research applications from many parts of the world. Many times there are Mexican students studying abroad, but many times are researchers from Singapore, from Taiwan, I mean, you name it. We need to standardize software among area responsible for statistical projects and microdata laboratory. Not each area, but not everybody has the same upgrade of certain software, or some areas do not use that software at all. And the strengths. Once area responsible for statistical areas were convinced, their support to the service has been incredible. I mean, they really support research. using the area responsible for statistical projects to support service made financially available for Mexico for the microdata. If we have created a new area, it would have been so expensive, we couldn't have afforded. We don't charge for the service, it's cost-free, because that's a way of supporting research. And also another strength was the ICT human and physical infrastructure robustness made possible for the microdata laboratory and resilience in COVID lockdown. I mean, their support has been incredible. The microdata laboratory development had total support of the president of INEGI, well, of all the presidents that have been since 2013, I must say. And the holistic development of the microdata access helped smoothen the process of attention of users, because there are certain things only areas can't really respond to certain very specific doubts. Definition of standardized nomenclature has facilitated the process of attention. By the name, each file can be easily traced. And we really ask the user to use the nomenclature. So when we take out the file, we exactly know from whom it is and for what reason. What we have to do with that file. And that's for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Natalia, for your excellent presentation. Muchas gracias por tu tiempo y por esta presentación tan clara y tan útil para nosotros. Our next speaker is Sara from Statistics Canada. Please, Sara, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Let me share my screen. Good. I will assume you are seeing my screen unless anybody tells me differently. Thank you. So, buenos días a todos y gracias por invitarnos a hablar con ustedes hoy. As mentioned, my name is Sara Timbane and I'm here from Statistics Canada. So I'm going to talk to you today about our various data access programs for our external researchers and specifically what we've been doing to modernize that data access in the last couple of years. So the first graphic that I want to show you today is our continuum of data access. And this really does highlight our main programs for how users gain access to our data. So looking at the top, we can see that on the left, we start more with our self-serve modes of access. And on the right, we go toward our secure modes for how our users access our confidential microdata files. On the other axis here, we see our access solutions. So we can think of these as the technology that is being used to access our data. Our location of access is either how to gain access to the data, for example, from the website, or the physical location that the users must be in to access the data, and then finally the types of data. So looking first at our public use microdata files, these are microdata as is indicated by the title, but these are meant for public consumption. So what this means is that we've taken our confidential microdata files. All of our files that our external researchers are accessing have had the direct identifiers removed, very similar to what the other two organizations have talked about today. But the public use microdata files have more than that done to them to make them available publicly. So we do really decrease the level of geography. Often the finest level is only at the provincial level, for example. We do also collapse a lot of our continuous variables to make them categorical. So this does help make the files, again, accessible to the public because it does become nearly impossible to identify an individual in those files. And these can be downloaded directly from our website. We also have a self-serve tabulation tool. So this might be of interest to some. And Marianne had mentioned that this is something that they're looking to do in Finland. So this might be of interest to you as well. And we call this our real-time remote access. So I think similar to what was talked about in the Mexican system is we do have a mode of access available where users can submit their script or their code. It is run against the full microdata file. However, they are not interacting directly with that file. So they submit their code and their output is sent back to them. Now, this actually is done through an automated system. So we are not running their code for them. It is run through our real-time remote access system. And then auto vetting is done on that output. Now, I will mention that the scope of what can come out of that system is limited to what can be automatically vetted. So in other words, reviewed to make sure confidentiality is maintained. So this is limited to descriptive statistics and tabular output. So you can produce tables, things such as percentages, proportions, but you cannot do any model output through this service. And then most of the rest of the presentation will be focused on our confidential microdata files and how we govern access to those files. So again, these have had the direct identifiers removed, but there is a good amount of detail still in those files. So the two access solutions, again, technologies that we have to access these files right now are called the Virtual Data Lab and our virtual research data centers. Our virtual research data centers, the technology for that is being rolled out this year, and I'll talk a little bit more about what that looks like, but the research data centers have been in place for over 20 years now, and I'll speak a little bit about that in the coming slides. Our virtual research data lab is a fairly new technology, so we launched this in October of 2021. And I'll talk a little bit more about this in the coming slides, as well as do a quick demonstration of what this looks like toward the end of the presentation. To access our confidential microdata files, regardless of the technology, there are three types of locations of access that we allow our external researchers to access these files. And I'll look at these a little bit more closely in the next slide, but these are on StatCan premises, in a secure room, or in authorized workspaces. And the type of data that can be accessed is social and economic data, but this also includes various administrative data sets that we get from partners, as well as linked or integrated data. So this shows a little bit more closely our approved locations of access to the confidential microdata files. And the location that is approved for each researcher and project is dependent on the sensitivity of the microdata file. So our most sensitive data, again, regardless of technology of where that's being accessed, still needs to be accessed from a physical location that we consider a StatCan premises. So this could be our headquarters located in Ottawa, or it could be a research data center. And these are centers that we have set up across our academic institutions across the country, which I will show in the next slide. We also allow access to our data from secure rooms. So these are very similar to StatCan premises in the way that they're set up. We still have swipe card access to the rooms. Most of the time we are having security cameras in there. This little graphic here shows that we're monitoring access virtually. The biggest difference is that in our StatCan premises, so again, for example, in our research data centers, we do have staff present, whereas in our secure rooms, we do not. So these are set up, for example, in another federal government department that we have allowed to set up a secure room to access our data. And then finally, the most popular location of access, especially in the last couple of years, has been our authorized workspaces. So this term is a little bit vague intentionally because it does include a number of different locations, such as an office, a conference room, but most popular lately is a private workspace within a deemed employee's personal residence or from home. You'll see this term deemed employee a couple times throughout the presentation, and I'll explain it a little bit more as I go forward, but we can use this synonymously with external researcher. So our researchers, to access our data as governed by our Statistics Act, our researchers do have to become deemed employees of Statistics Canada. So there's a number of processes that they will go through to become deemed employees, which we'll look at a little bit more closely later. So we can see here where our research data centers are located, and these are primarily in academic institutions, and this has been 22 years in the making. So we started this type of access in 2000, and we have been expanding it over the last 22 years. So you'll see that we have data centers spread across the country, and again, that these are in our academic institutions, whereas we do have a couple centers available for government access across the country. These are not as significant as the research data centers because a lot of our government access is happening in our capital of Ottawa. And as remote access becomes more prevalent, we will see fewer of these centers going forward as well. So what is the Virtual Data Lab? Again, here we're talking about the technology being used. So this is a cloud-based infrastructure. It allows researchers to access a variety of modern statistical software, and it does have monitoring controls built in. Unfortunately, I can't show you these today because it does have personal information from our users. And we have vetting management. So as the other institutions explained as well, everything that is leaving our secure environment requires it to be reviewed by our analysts. And this is a process that we call vetting. So your output, once you've prepared it, once you've used the data, our analysts will vet that output and then allow it to be released from our secure environment. The VDL really does provide more flexible locations of access, again, relative to the sensitivity of the files. So our most secure or our most sensitive files are still only accessible from our StatCan headquarters. However, they can still be accessed using the Virtual Data Lab technology. We just limit the location where those need to be accessed. As well, one of the biggest benefits that we found is allowing the capacity to grow and shrink based on the level of demand. So up until the introduction of the Virtual Data Lab, all of our data was sitting on on-premises servers. And of course, we found that those ran out of room very quickly, and we were really limited by the physical capacity that we had in our head office servers. So this has been one of the biggest benefits, is allowing us to grow and shrink with our user base. Whereas our virtual research data centers, so again, this is a technology that will be rolling out later this year to service the existing research data center network. And we can think of this as kind of a private cloud technology. So again, all of our research data centers had on-premises servers sitting in each individual center, whereas this will now be consolidated into two central hubs. So one sitting at the University of Waterloo and a second one sitting at Simon Fraser University. And very similar to our Virtual Data Lab technology, this will allow users to access either from the secure rooms of the RDCs or from authorized workspaces such as from home. So thankfully, this framework has already been discussed. So Natalia went into some detail around this. So I will spare you going into additional detail, but just kind of explain how this framework has been really helpful for us and how we've thought about governing access to the different modes of access that we have available. So this is the five safes framework. Again, that Natalia mentioned, that was developed in the United Kingdom. And the way that we see this is really that each of these elements complement each other and are used in different ways for different modes of access. So for example, our public use microdata files, we consider that data to be very safe. In other words, it's fit for public consumption. We do not have to limit the users, the platform, those kinds of things. So because that data is so safe, we actually don't do anything with the safe people, projects, settings, or output. So we're not vetting the output, we're not limiting the setting in which they can access it, we're not reviewing projects, and we're not reviewing who is accessing it. Whereas when we're looking at our confidential microdata files, because we consider that data less safe, in other words, it has more granular information, we really step up on the other safes. So with Safe People, very similar to what the other institutions spoke about, we are accrediting users. They do have to apply to access the microdata. So this kind of gets into safe projects where we're reviewing that project. Only people who are contributing to the public good are allowed to use those files. Again, with Safe People, I will explain the deemed employee process a little bit more, but they are going through that deeming process. Our safe settings, so we have a lot of configurations on our IT platforms, as well as I've mentioned, our most sensitive data is still only accessible from our secure rooms or StatCan premises. And finally, with the safe outputs, again, we are vetting that output before it is released. So how we like to think about this framework is that, again, each of these elements works together in different amounts until we reach that level of safe enough for each mode of access. So for each mode, we're examining each of these to find what is the right balance that works for that mode of access. So some of the criteria for researchers and organizations to gain access to our data. So again, very similar to what the other organizations have mentioned, that their researchers have to be accredited. So this means that they don't have any violations of protocol on record with us, and that their organization does vouch for them. They do need to become deemed employees. So this means that they need security clearance. They need to declare any conflicts of interest. They swear an oath of office and secrecy with Statistics Canada. They have mandatory training and they need to pass a mandatory test. And then finally, that they sign a data access agreement with Statistics Canada. For our remote access, so through the virtual data lab, we're also looking very closely at the organizations that we give access to, because we've implemented a shared risk framework where, for example, they are signing a memorandum of understanding with us or a similar organizational agreement. And again, that they're only using data to improve the public good. So if they can't show that this is the case, then we won't give that organization access to the data. These are some of the features of the VDL, but instead of going into too much detail here, I'm just going to do a quick demo of what our virtual data lab environment looks like. So let me see if I can stop sharing and share my browser instead. Just bear with me for a second. And it's this one. Oh, and of course, it has signed me out during this presentation, so just bear with me for a second. But actually, this is a good demonstration of our two-factor authentication. So I do need to sign in with my cloud account, and then it will call my phone. So you have to have your phone number registered with your cloud account. And this is one of our required features, is that we have to have two-factor authentication going into any platform that has our protected data in it. So just bear with me for a second. So what we can see here is our dashboard that we've developed for researchers. It gives a little bit of an overview on what the virtual data lab is and how to use this dashboard and the tools available. We can put some announcements here, such as if there's going to be planned maintenance. We've got some contact information, and then we have the resources that are available to users. So I will just quickly show you how to log into one of your virtual machines. We do have one virtual machine per user per project. And this is because we do not allow our data to cross from one project to another. So that needs to be kept separate for the project and for the data that was approved for that project. Now, my virtual machines here are administrative ones or administrator ones. So the naming convention is a little bit different here, but I can just log into this machine here. I have already started this machine because that does take a minute to do. but I can just go to my browser connect. And I can launch my virtual machine. As you can see here, we do ask them to acknowledge a message before they are allowed to log in. So this just reminds them of their responsibilities as a deemed employee. So things like their location of work, that their activity is being monitored, to acknowledge their obligations in the oath that they took. No unauthorized person can see the information on their screen, etc. And so if they do not acknowledge this by saying, okay, they cannot access their virtual machine. And that will time out after a little bit. So as you can see here, this just looks like a very regular Windows 10 desktop, which is what we wanted. We wanted it to be very familiar and user-friendly. We can see a bunch of statistical software that they have available on their desktop. And then there's the various project workspaces. So because I'm an administrator, I can see all of the projects that we have. But if I were a researcher coming in, I would only see the project that I was logged into. So I know that I'm close to the end of my time here, but I will just very quickly show you that as they go into their project workspace, all of the users on this project have access to this workspace. So you can see this is a fairly active project. We set up a few folders for them, such as documentation and data. If I go into the data folder, they can save their data files here, and they can modify the ones that they save here. Whereas we also have a shortcut to our master file repository. So if I use this shortcut, we can see I've now gone into our data repository. And these are some of the data sets that we have available. For example, our Aboriginal Peoples Survey. So we can see here that we have some documentation available, as well as some data available currently in SAS, but they can use any of the statistical software that's available. And just before I end here, I'll just show a couple of the security features, such as, even though this is a virtual machine on my browser, my internet access is blocked, so I can't take anything out that way. I also cannot copy and paste in and out of the environment. So if I try to, for example, copy this text here, oh no, there we go. Sorry, the Zoom is just blocking my access here. I copied this earlier, so that's why it's pasting that, but it will not copy and paste text in and out of the environment. So researchers cannot bring any information out themselves. To transfer information out, they have to ask an administrator to do so for them. And the admins can come into this tool called Microsoft Azure Storage Explorer, put it into one of these accounts. And as the researcher, I can actually go and pick that up from the portal itself. So I can access the same storage account from the external portal here, which if it loads, I will show you. Okay, well, that's being a bit too slow, and I think I'm pretty much out of time, but you can see here that this same storage account is accessible, oh, there we go, both within and outside of the virtual machine, whereas it's only the administrators that have access from inside the virtual machine. So they can go in and put a file into the storage account, and then researchers can come and pick it up here once it has been approved for release. So I can come in here as an administrator and paste it in here, and they can pick it up outside of the portal. So I will stop here, and I think we can go to questions.
Thank you very much, Sara, for your wonderful presentation, including the live demo, which is very, very nice to see how it works. So Thank you very much. We really appreciate that. Now is the time for questions for the speakers. I have a question in the chat for Marianne from Diego Rodriguez. He said, does Statistical Finland charge for data access? And don't they follow an open data policy? Please, Marianne.
Yes, thank you for very much. I mean, all the statistics that Statistics Finland does, of course, is open data, and they are available on our website. And but then, as I mentioned, there is this decree on if there is sort of extra work done just because of somebody wanting us to do that. So to put together a data set for a research project, pull that data out from our data warehouse, put that together. We have the hourly tax or what we charge for the work. And then, so yes, we do charge, and actually all of us working at the research services, we are supposed to sort of get in as much money as we cost. So because the thing is that if it is not something that, but now we will see if that will change with this new act that is being amended, when it will actually be a job put to Statistics Finland to have the research services. But as now it is, and we have our things. I mean, if some researchers can't find the statistical table that they would need, or not researchers, anybody, they can ask Statistics Finland to make a table, and then the price for the table is according to how much work was put into making that. And then the remote access system does cost also quite much, and that is something that we have been trying to discuss with the ministry, saying that it is a research infrastructure, and research infrastructure should be paid by the government. But and we know that our neighboring countries, Sweden and Denmark, have their remote access system, so that the ministries of research pay for them, but not us yet, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you. We have a question for Sara. If users need certain libraries from R, how they can have them in their working space?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's something that, as we moved from our very closed network in the research data centers to our still closed but more open network on the virtual data lab, we've really been able to improve this process. So in the research data centers, it was completely closed off in a sealed network. So anything that was brought in, such as our packages, would have to be done through email, USB, transferring from one system to another, installing them. And sometimes the way that you install, for example, Stata packages is not just a straight copy and paste into a folder. There's, a lot of dependencies in the packages and things like that. So it's something that in the research data centers, that in the virtual data lab, we've really been able to improve by allowing some information to come through the firewall that generally blocks the internet. So we do have a couple super admin machines that are able to go. So for example, Stata can access some of the repositories online. So we can access those machines, go into Stata and directly install packages from approved sources online. Very similar to R, we can access the CRAN and we can install our packages and their dependencies that way. So we do allow, again, very certain users on certain machines access through the firewall that way, so that we can bring in those packages for users. And then we create our own little repository in the virtual data lab that all of our users have access to.
Thank you. I have two more questions for you, Sara. In order to have remote access, do you need to sign a contract to become an employee, or only employees can have remote access? And the second question is, can you provide examples what does it mean to contribute to the public good?
Absolutely. So for the first question, so the three modes of access that I highlighted right at the beginning there, so our public use microdata files, our real-time remote access, and then access to our confidential microdata files, those first two, you do not need to sign a data access agreement, and you do not need to become a deemed employee of Statistics Canada. So the access to those is a little bit easier, faster. However, what you get is less granular, less detailed than access to the confidential microdata files. So for access to our confidential files, yes, you do need to sign a data access agreement with Statistics Canada, and this outlines various terms and conditions for accessing our data. It will outline only the data that you have approved for that project and have access to, as well as things like your approved location of access for that project. And then to the second question, some examples of what contributes to the public good. So essentially all academic research is contributing to the public good. All policy research from various levels of government is contributing to the public good. Where it becomes more challenging, and this is something that was touched on from the other organizations as well, is when for-profit, not-for-profit companies come in and want to use our data. So how we evaluate that is it cannot be used to increase profits of an organization. It cannot be used for marketing, but if there is a legitimate reason that they want to improve the lives of Canadians, such as looking at health outcomes from various indicators such as sugar intake, that is something that does contribute to the lives of Canadians and provides a benefit to the public. So we would consider that type of research as contributing to the public good.
Thank you, Sara. I have a question for Natalia. Do you have some key recommendations for us and other NSO that want to implement a research data center? I mean, so that are at the beginning of this journey, like us. You are mute.
Well, the first thing is that data has to be documented. You have to have proper metadata and make clear, define your microdata access policy, how you will define two different types of statistical projects. And then depending on the resources, define a scheme in terms, usually our countries do not have so much resources as to create a data archive service. So a network service scheme like we defined it in Mexico is more feasible when you have scarce resources, because you need experts to clear output as well. Canada says vetted output, but that has to be somebody with a lot of expertise in each statistical project. So really depends very much on your own circumstances, how you make feasible the service within surely scarce of resources. No? And I will tell you the same thing that they told me when I visit the different statistical offices. Do one step at a time. Do it very, very carefully. You look at the services Canada is providing, they are amazing, no? But to arrive there, well, we don't have the resources, but what we can do in our own circumstances, and be extremely careful with security. The way you manage data and the persons and the purpose. I think, at least in my country, be absolutely sure that the use of the data is for a legitimate objective, no, for public, not only public good, but legitimate. No, be sure it's used for a good purpose for society.
Thank you, Natalia. We have a lot of questions, but we don't have time. Maybe we can send the question to the speakers by email, and then we can share the answers. I want to thank you, Natalia, Sara, Marianne, for your presentation, for your time, for sharing your experiences. I think it is very useful for us and for other NSOs. So thank you very much. Next part of the webinar will be in Spanish, because we will start a discussion. La siguiente parte del webinar la vamos a hacer en español. Para eso vamos a invitar a Javier Lacida, presidente del INED, en el Instituto de Evaluación Educativa, y Lorenzo Caliendo, presidente de la Sociedad de Economistas de Uruguay. Y bueno, lo vamos a hacer en español porque bueno, también podemos dar más participación, ¿verdad?, a quienes nos están acompañando. Bueno, muchas gracias Javier y Lorenzo por esta participación en este panel, en esta mesa de discusión. Y bueno, quisiera empezar con bueno, sus primeras impresiones acerca de lo que nos han contado las colegas de Canadá, Finlandia y México acerca de estos laboratorios de microdatos, centros de investigación. No sé, tal vez Javier, si tú quieres empezar.
Bueno, perfecto, con gusto. ¿Qué tal? Buenos días, muchas gracias por la invitación. Nosotros, tal como nos propuso el Instituto de Estadística, la idea es mirar esto como usuarios, como destinatarios de estos servicios o laboratorios de microdatos. Mi percepción es que para el Instituto Nacional de Evaluación Educativa sería una oportunidad muy interesante la participación en un servicio, en un laboratorio de microdatos, por los cometidos del propio organismo. Hoy nosotros observamos que hay muchísima información disponible producida de parte de los propios organismos educativos sobre sí mismos. Eso nos da a nosotros mucha riqueza para poder monitorear y para poder evaluar. Yo diría, hasta ahora la hemos utilizado sobre todo para monitoreo, y el desafío, mirando las experiencias que se presentaron hoy, es además poder dar un paso más y usar esa información, esas bases de datos no producidas directamente por nosotros para la evaluación. El desafío, y ahí a uno le daba envidia escuchar la experiencia de los otros países, el desafío es el control, es el acceso abundante y rápido, potencialmente rápido. O sea, nosotros tenemos la impresión de que no habría demasiadas restricciones si armáramos herramientas como las que se presentaron hoy para acceder a esa información que cada uno de los grandes organismos ejecutores de educación hoy está produciendo. Se necesita ahí herramientas. En algunos casos hay algunos sistemas que están funcionando muy bien, como el sistema URI en primaria, y hay otros que requieren mejoras, apoyos, desarrollos, que están en curso, pero que todavía no son una realidad. Y además se necesita articulación hacia adentro de los propios organismos del sistema educativo. Creo que nosotros compartimos con lo que se ha presentado en los otros países, en Uruguay, una serie de nudos legales, como hemos visto en la experiencia de otros países, de cómo se resuelve el trade-off entre seguridad, cuidado de la confidencialidad, y por otro lado, un acceso fácil y fluido. Probablemente para eso haya que diferenciar tipo de datos. Eso hoy en Uruguay nosotros lo sentimos todavía como un desafío importante, que requiere un trabajo conjunto de los organismos que tenemos que ver con el asunto. Porque nosotros, para cumplir con nuestros cometidos de evaluación y monitoreo, muchas veces nos encontramos con restricciones legales por estos criterios de seguridad y de confidencialidad en el acceso a información, que es imprescindible para poder cumplir con los cometidos del instituto. Creo que sería interesante, en el marco de una experiencia de este tipo, pensar en asesoramiento y también, ¿por qué no?, en auditorías técnicas para la mejora de la calidad de los datos de los organismos, en auditoría técnica estadística, que fortalezcan los procesos de registro, de sistematización y de disponibilización de la información. Después, tenemos un desafío también en la articulación hacia adentro de los varios organismos que estamos trabajando con información y produciendo y utilizando información en la educación. Ahí hemos dado un paso importante con la creación de una mesa de intercambio de datos entre Ceibal, Ministerio de Educación, ANEP y el Instituto de Evaluación Educativa, pero la mesa es un propósito, una herramienta que hay que construir después día a día y que no deja de tener una serie de dificultades que otro tipo de herramientas complementarias o ámbitos como este podrían ayudar a resolver. Ahí nosotros valoramos mucho como referencia y como modelo de funcionamiento y como usuarios la experiencia del CIDES, que me parece que vale la pena tenerla como una buena práctica, como una buena experiencia desarrollada aquí en esa dirección. Después, nosotros entendemos que tenemos que articular con otras bases de datos. El 60% de los adolescentes uruguayos y jóvenes están afuera del sistema educativo, o sea que necesitamos articular con la base de datos del Banco de Previsión Social, ojalá en algún momento con la historia clínica electrónica, porque educación y salud tienen muchas áreas de intersección. Y bueno, hemos pensado varias veces, para diseñar poblaciones de control, sería muy interesante poder acceder a las propias bases del Instituto Nacional de Estadística. Hay como una potencialidad de Uruguay, que tenemos en Uruguay, un esfuerzo, una innovación. Me parece que vale la pena señalar la creación, la puesta en funcionamiento el año pasado de la Agencia de Monitoreo y Evaluación de Políticas Públicas, a fin del año pasado, que uno piensa que tendría que tener un papel de liderazgo, articulación de este tipo de iniciativas. Dos comentarios finales. Nosotros queremos llegar a investigadores y a técnicos, a quienes hacen evaluación, y también entiendo que tenemos una vocación de ser mediadores a través de aplicaciones, de herramientas, de llegada de algunos de los datos, que hay que seleccionar bien cuáles y a quiénes, a colectivos más amplios. Por ejemplo, a los docentes, o por ejemplo a los educandos, o por ejemplo a las familias que envían hijos al sistema educativo. Hay que pensarlo muy bien. Nosotros tenemos algunas herramientas ya desarrolladas que funcionan muy bien, pero esto, quiero señalar, también es parte de nuestra agenda de los desafíos. Nosotros no solamente trabajamos para opinión especializada, sino que queremos trabajar para los actores del sistema educativo. Así que valoramos mucho el acceso fácil y también el apoyo y el intercambio para el propio análisis estadístico. La encuesta nacional de adolescencia y juventud va en la próxima edición a pasar a la modalidad de panel. Es un desafío el contar con herramientas estadísticas para poder capitalizar toda esa información. En Uruguay no estamos tan acostumbrados y no tenemos tanta experiencia y acumulación en procesamiento de información longitudinal. Muchas
gracias, Javier. Muchas gracias. Lorenzo, adelante con tus comentarios. Gracias.
Sí, bueno, muchas gracias a ustedes. Bueno, quisiera aprovechar a agradecerle a Aboal, a Federico, por organizar este webinar. Me pareció excelente. Totalmente de acuerdo con lo que decía Javier. Quiero aprovechar a agradecer a Marianne, Sara y Natalia. I don't know if you guys are there, but I mean, thank you very much. It was an amazing, I think, presentation. Creo que desde el punto de vista de la CEU, lo que me gustaría recalcar de esta charla son como 3 aspectos para mí fundamentales. Uno, relacionado al marco normativo. Creo que algo que aprendimos en el caso de Finlandia y en México, tanto con el acto de 2013 en Finlandia, el ACT, no sé así fue como lo definieron, y la ley 2008, qué importantes fueron esos, para que a partir de ahí se generaran recursos y posibilidad de que investigadores accedan a los datos. Entonces, quizás como desafío que yo planteo al principio es, en ese sentido, ¿cómo está Uruguay? Si es posible seguir adelante con esto, sí que haya un cambio en el marco normativo, y de qué manera pues, se podría contribuir, ya sea del lado de la academia, investigadores, a apoyar a un cambio normativo que permita al INE, en este caso, tener las facultades que tienen estos institutos de investigación, que da la posibilidad de hacer cosas. Creo que México hablaba de que le dieron un cheque en blanco, lo cual le permitió a ellos replantear un poco cómo se generan los datos, cómo se dan los datos. El segundo aspecto que quisiera recalcar de la charla fue la contribución al bien público. Me pareció muy interesante eso y creo que es fundamental. Yo he tenido experiencia cuando accedo a datos de que me piden que contribuya de alguna manera, no solo con algo tan concreto como decía, me parecía, capaz que me equivoco, pero creo que es Marianne, que decía que simplemente con un trabajo académico ya es suficiente. En Estados Unidos, por ejemplo, en el censo también piden que uno contribuya, ya sea depurando la base de datos de alguna manera, generando tablas de concordancia, etc. Y el tercer aspecto que quisiera destacar es educar a los investigadores. Se dieron cuenta de me parece que los tres recalcaron sobre el aspecto de que, bueno, el investigador tiene que educarse en términos de qué datos está usando, de confidencialidad. Hay como un contrato implícito que uno firma, y explícito eventualmente en algunos casos, en el cual esos datos son datos públicos, y hay que tener mucho cuidado cuando uno maneja estos datos. Eso como los 3 aspectos para mí que yo recalco como importantes. Desde el punto de vista de la CEU, estamos convencidos que los datos son un insumo muy importante para hacer investigación. Los datos son, si no es el más importante, los datos son un insumo muy importante para hacer evaluación de políticas públicas. Me parece que trae la posibilidad de avanzar este camino y lo felicito, porque esto claramente está marcando una línea de ruta para el acceso a los datos. Entonces, del lado de la CEU, simplemente apoyarlos en lo que sea posible, lo que necesiten. Y gracias por nada, que podamos ser parte de esta discusión, y encantado en seguir discutiendo lo que sea. Así que no quiero poner ningún paro en el camino, todo lo contrario. Quiero que sigan corriendo, porque me parece que por acá viene la cosa. Gracias.
Muchas gracias, Lorenzo. Aprovecho la oportunidad para contarles que, bueno, sí, como bien decías vos, Lorenzo, es como el camino que, digamos, que estamos visualizando. Y bueno, la idea es paso a paso y de acuerdo a los recursos que tengamos, poder ir avanzando en este sentido, ¿no? Entonces, bueno, pensamos en alguna experiencia piloto, muy acotada, obviamente la revisión, ¿verdad?, de todo el marco normativo, procedimientos, ¿verdad?, apoyándonos mucho en las experiencias internacionales, de cómo se otorga el acceso, ¿verdad?, sobre todo a datos sensibles, a información confidencial, ¿no? Acá no estamos hablando, obviamente, de por ejemplo, microdatos de la SH, la encuesta continua de hogares, que publicamos en la página web del INE, ¿no? Estamos estamos hablando de información, como mencionábamos al inicio, registros administrativos, y otra serie de fuentes de información, digamos, que tenemos que hacer como mayor hincapié en lo que es la protección de esos datos, ¿no? Entonces, bueno, la idea es avanzar en ese sentido, hacer algunos pilotos tal vez en un laboratorio de microdatos alojado dentro del INE, en una sala con 2 o 3 computadores, y bueno, pensar, ir madurando esa idea, y bueno, también tomando en cuenta las experiencias internacionales, pero también obviamente adaptarlo a nuestro país, y bueno, conocer la opinión de los usuarios y construir a partir de ahí, ¿no? O sea, ese es un poco el objetivo. Obviamente esto implica recursos, ya lo mencionaron las oradoras, de preparar la información, ¿verdad? Documentar esos microdatos, analizar, digamos, los resultados, ¿verdad? Si, bueno, estamos preservando la confidencialidad de la información, para luego, a partir de allí, sí, entregar esa información a los investigadores. Bueno, obviamente todo eso implica recursos técnicos, ¿verdad?, que estén detrás de eso, ¿no? Pero bueno, eso también es parte de este camino, y bueno, de lo que tenemos que ir viendo cómo resolver, pero creo que es fundamental brindar acceso a esta información, porque bueno, esa es la misión del INE, y bueno, tampoco tenemos capacidad para hacer investigación o producir las estadísticas que podríamos, a partir de toda esta, el data warehouse que comentábamos al inicio, ¿verdad? Y para eso es fundamental aliarnos con los usuarios, investigadores, y bueno, y explotarlo más, ¿no? Esa es un poco la idea. No sé si tenían algún otro comentario más, Javier, no sé si, bueno, Lorenzo. Bueno, queremos entonces agradecer a todos quienes han participado de este webinar, a las oradoras, Marian, Sara, Natalia, también a ustedes, Javier, Lorenzo, muchas gracias por participar, a todos quienes se han unido a través del webinar en Zoom, y también a través de nuestro canal de YouTube. En total hemos llegado a más de 100 participantes. Obviamente es un tema que despierta mucho interés, no solo obviamente aquí en Uruguay, sino en la región y en varias partes del mundo. Bueno, se han unido de distintas regiones colegas a, bueno, conocer estas experiencias. Así que bueno, aprovechamos a enviarles un fuerte saludo a todos, y muchas gracias por la participación.
Gracias a ustedes. Chau, chau.
Chao.
Muchas gracias.